So about 3 years ago, I made a decision to purchase a lot in Brazil with the intention of building a house on the lot. In Brazil, and someone can chime into the comments if I'm not correct in this, but everything that I've read in my experience is bank financing doesn't exist for the purchase of plots in lot subdivisions. Now, maybe this is changing because the capital markets in Brazil are constantly evolving, but my understanding at the time was that wasn't available through a bank. So these purchases are generally financed by consumers they're financed for consumers by the lot developer. So the lot developer will come in, and I don't know how they do it, whether it's through a series of partnerships or independently, but they'll come in and they'll have a tract of land, acreage, and they're going to subdivide this land into lots. They will put in the infrastructure, esgoto, which is basically the plumbing, the electrical lines are all run, and if it's a reputable developer, they're doing all these things, and the roads are there, and everything's kind of cut. You might end up putting in your sidewalk, but everything up to the curb is already there. Now, our developer, which was reputable, and how do you know that you're dealing with a reputable developer, whether it's for an apartment or a community that they're developing? That's a wholly separate video. But our developer gave us the option of financing the lot through them. I think it was 11 years at something like 11%, which didn't seem bad. It's because my wife's Brazilian, the developer was willing to do that. Now, keep in mind, I also had the option of purchasing the lot in cash. If I purchased the lot in cash from the realtor that we were using as a middle person, probably said that we probably could have gotten a little bit of a better deal. We had more room to negotiate than if we were to use the developer's financing. So I thought to myself, 11%, that's not bad. 11 years, that's not bad. We'll pay it off a little bit early. So why not? Let's see how it goes. I don't have to come up with all the cash right now. That's great. I can do something else with my money. So I give the developer a 20% deposit, and my wife signs the contract. Let's use a round number, which is pretty close to accurate. At the time, the lot selling for about 250,000 reais. The exchange rate, $1 at the time, was getting you something around 5.74 reais. So it didn't seem like a bad deal. So we give them the 20%, and then there was a fee, like a finder's fee, that went to the realtor that we used as an in-between, who actually brought us to the property and kind of held our hands through that process. So we sit down with the developer, and he presents the contract to my wife and tries to explain it to me. We were fortunate. I speak some Portuguese, but not enough to sign a contract. My wife's not super familiar with contracts, but the developer spoke English and was very comfortable explaining everything to us. One of the things that he pointed out that's unfamiliar to a lot of foreign buyers is IPCA, which is the English translation is the Extended National Consumer Price Index. I think it's in Portuguese, Índice Nacional de Preços do Consumidores Amplo. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. It's basically Brazil's benchmark inflation rate. So this is calculated by the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, IBGE. Okay, Instituto Brasileiro de Geografia e Estatística. Okay, so you've got this like our CPI in the US that I'm familiar with, which most people don't even think about, and I don't think about, but I'm aware of it. But there you have this IPCA, which is basically Consumer Price Index. And the developer was really good at explaining to us that you're signing a contract with his company. And at the end of the year, there's going to be an inflation number that the government comes up with. And they take how much more you owe, how much you have left after what you've paid for that year. So you could put it even into an actuarial scale here with the interest rate and the period of time and come up with how much is going to principal, how much is going to interest. So it's very clear to understand it. But at the end of the year, they take a look at that principal, and that principal gets adjusted back up by whatever this CPI number is. So, and if you've done a mortgage in the United States, when you first start paying the loan, the first years, you're paying way more interest than you are principal. The same thing applies there because it's the same scale, except you've got this adjustment taking place every year. And the adjustment can be somewhat significant. The recommendation on the part of the developer and most people is pay extra to pay it off faster. So that payment will go to the principal. And what actually happens is if you pay more than your scheduled payment, in theory, that would pay it off in the 11 years without that price adjustment, your next month's payment gets lowered because you've paid a little bit more. So that recalculation is taking place on a monthly basis there. But I'm accustomed to the U.S. system, so I paid the same amount. Then at the end of the year, we saw this change after they factored in the CPI. It was a big shock to me. Most foreign buyers will not have the option of financing in Brazil. Because my wife's Brazilian, they were willing to give her the financing. The two sticker shocks for me during the course of the process, the IPCA adjustment at the end of the year, if you just pay the monthly payments, which is what we did, it was almost as if we paid nothing throughout the course of the year because that adjustment, depending on where the inflation is, I guess it could work to your advantage, but every year it did not work to our advantage. And then the other thing that was another shock was the exchange rate. So every month we're transferring money to make the monthly payment. And although lots of Brazilians consider their currency not to be the strongest currency, the reality is when you've signed a contract for, even if it's a $50,000, which a lot of people might not consider a big contract, but for a 250,000 reais, which in Brazil probably for a lot, some people would consider, depending on the city, a lot, signing a contract for this, and then you're making the payments in dollars. Now, when it's $5, $6, it's not so bad. But when the exchange rate is going down to the advantage of the real, so you might start out 1 to 5, but when it goes 1 to 4 and your payment is denominated in reais, that's a 20% change. So that means you have to come up with 20% more dollars. And the fear factor is how much more is the currency going to work against you as almost like a reverse inflation working against you on a monthly basis. So that was a big fear. Almost everything that you read online is going to tell you if you are a foreigner purchasing property in Brazil, do not finance it in Brazil. Not only because of, now the IPCA might not apply if you go through a bank to purchase if you're able to secure financing there, but you might be able to possibly at a large financial institution. I don't know, maybe you can. But if you are able to, you're going to end up dealing with a significantly higher interest rate. And then if you're making a monthly payment and not purchasing the apartment or the house or the lot in cash, you're going to deal with the exchange rate. It might work to your advantage. It might work to your disadvantage. You really just don't know. Long story short, as they say, we got really tired of dealing with this IVCA, and after the second time experiencing it, I felt that I didn't want to experience it again, so we just made the effort to pay off the lot in total. Wanted to share this video so you have an understanding of our experience if you're thinking of purchasing a lot in Brazil or a property in Brazil. I don't have any regrets. It's where in retirement I'm going to spend a significant amount of time. That's the plan, God willing. The property, in basically 3 years, it's appreciated 40%. My home in the U.S., I don't know if it's appreciated 3% in 3 years, but 40% is a pretty good return which we're not going to, but if we wanted to sell it, that's what comparable lots are selling for now. The only thing that you always need to think about, and the purpose of this series of videos that I'm trying to make, is to communicate my experience to someone who's not only thinking of retiring outside the United States, the planning that needs to take place, and it's a lot of planning. I'm within a 5-year window. Sharing that experience, hopefully folks will be able to glean from my experience answers to their own questions. I'll also share with you, as I go through each phase and each step, compartmentalize videos, so you'll hopefully be able to use my experience as I hope, a success story, or if there's something that I encountered that, everything's pretty much a script that you might want to try to avoid encountering or replicate. So hopefully this was helpful to you. I'd like it if people subscribed. That'd be nice. It'd be encouraging. Overall, have a great day.